Welcome to ICology, the podcast dedicated to interesting people doing interesting things in the world of internal communication. And yes, this is just the kick in the pants I needed to get back to doing episodes again. Today's guest, Rachel Miller, founder of All Things IC, but most importantly, my friend. If internal comms is your passion, then this is your podcast. Listen in. I'm your host, Chuck Ghost, and thank you for listening. It's a privilege having Rachel Miller on today. When I was doing some research for this, I realized the last time we spoke with Rachel was about Brexit, and that was more than 2.5 years ago, and it's still a topic, so it shows how tricky some communications are. We're not going to be talking about Brexit today. We're talking about a little different British invasion, and that's that Rachel Miller is coming across to the U.S. to speak in Keynote at PRSA Connect 2019. She is our opening keynote and wanted to have her on to talk about the trip coming over, the event itself. So Rachel, welcome to ICology.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Can you believe we're still talking about Brexit and we are still no clearer of what's going on?
I mean, it doesn't impact me as much as it does you, but I still see, it was shocking to me to say that it's almost 3 years ago that vote took place. You and I spoke the very next day talking about what this meant for communicators the next day and how they were going to be talking about this with their companies. And clearly still, again, almost 3 years later, the conversations continue, and it's probably still a challenge for communicators.
Completely. So in honesty, we are no clearer today than we were when I spoke to you fresh off the back of the vote. So if you fold that time in two, we have no more clarity than we had back then, in all honesty. So it's been an adventure, shall we say, for professional communicators over here in the UK to try and negotiate and talk about all things Brexit related. So I'm very glad to not do that today and focus on all things PRSA related and talk about the conference.
I was like, because we can't certainly point any political fingers at you guys, because we have our own problems over here. So we're all in one big mess together, I guess. But
so let's avoid politics today.
Absolutely, good call. Good call. So let's talk about PRSA Connect. Are you excited to come over, and what does this mean to you to keynote it at the event this coming May?
I'm really excited to come over. So I've not got on a plane for anybody, Chuck, for about 7 years because I have 3 very young children and I haven't traveled, so I've prioritized family time. So it took something really special to get me to jump on a plane and to leave my family. And when you got in touch about the conference, it just seemed like such a good opportunity to meet face to face with all of the US communicators who I've communicated with only online. So to come over the British invasion, as you kindly pointed out, and bring a story about internal comms and story about personal branding over from London was an opportunity that I didn't want to miss. So very excited. I haven't been to the US since I worked at Vistion, which was back in 2003. So it's been a really long time. So yeah,
well,
can't wait.
Here. US is still
marvelous. I had a great time when I came over. It was for work back in 2003. So it's been a really long time since I was last on US soil. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
And it was one of our committee calls talking about PRSA Connect and pitching keynote ideas. And it was one of the committee members asked, she's like, do you think we can get Rachel Miller? I was like, you know what? I don't know. I know it's hard for her to travel. I don't know how much she travels, but let's give it a go. Let's ask. And so we really do take it as a privilege that you accepted our invitation and are coming over to do the opening keynote. Thinking about kind of the overall agenda, though, you and I are kicking off the event with a chat. Kind of very casual conversation between the two of us. I've labeled it breaking the ice because a part of that, we will be enjoying gin and tonics during this conversation.
I love that. That should be a rider, right?
That's a good
conferences. Love that.
Kind of like the Van Halen brown M&Ms, gin and tonics.
But you introduced me to gin and tonic, Chuck, when you were over in London. So I can't claim responsibility for the gin. That's all you.
Well, it's one of my greatest points of pride in my life is introducing you to gin and you taking that in. But let's focus on your keynote. What will you be talking about? What sort of information will you be sharing with attendees?
So I'm going to be focusing on all things internal communication and personal branding related. And the key bit there is that you don't need to be a Kardashian to have a personal brand. Everybody has one. And it's been a topic that I've researched for a couple of years. And the intention behind the talk that I'll be giving at the conference is, what does it mean for internal communicators? What is a personal brand? How do you analyze it? What steps can you take to understand what yours is? And more importantly, how can you use your personal brand to transform your internal communication? So in a nutshell, that's what I'm going to be talking about and sharing ideas on, and giving the attendees some actions to take. So it's not just you listen to a talk and go, oh yes, that all sounds very jolly and very good, but you can leave with actions to think about how to apply some of the things that I'll be talking about day to day, the next day in your organization.
And thinking about this from a personal brand, it's that one thing that you own. You own your brand. Not to say you always necessarily own your reputation, but you do own your brand. So what makes a strong brand for a communicator?
So I determine personal brand as your promise and reputation. So you can't control what people say about you, but you can control how you react and how you respond. So if you're thinking about a personal brand, for me, there's some magic ingredients in there. And what makes a strong brand for a communicator is consistency, clarity, and certainty. So in other words, being really clear about who you are and what you're known for as an internal comms practitioner, and also for your team, for your department, who you are and what internal comms is known for has a huge impact on the work that you get to do. And often it is, that you get to do, whether you're given permission to have a seat at the table, which is a whole agenda item, of the conference around demonstrating your worth and gravitas, these conversations that we've had for a really long time. Having true insight into your personal brand can really unlock that for internal communicators and for their teams to really articulate by being concise around, this is who we are, what we do, how we work, how internal comms adds value. So I'm really excited when I work with companies and I see them go from quite a muddied water of, we're not quite sure what people think about us, to having real clarity, real consistency, real certainty, and it starts to transform their internal comms.
So consistency, clarity, and what was
certainty.
It? And certainty.
Yeah.
Those are three great takeaways for anybody listening, and a way to think about your own brand and how people perceive you. Because how does a strong internal brand for a communicator, how does that benefit them when it comes to how they're interacting with their coworkers or leaders at their company?
So there's 4 areas for me when I think about, without giving away all the secrets from what I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah, don't do that. No. We want people to sign up.
I'll give you 2. Okay, so there's normally 2 camps where you are a comms police or you are a trusted advisor. And you need to know that. How do people see you as an internal comms practitioner? Are you the comms police, where they expect you to correct their grammar and get your red pen out? And that's what you're known for. So your reputation and promise as a practitioner is that you will be correcting their work. Or is it a trusted advisor territory where you are brought into decision making early, where employees inside your organization know they can come to you for advice and guidance about how to be a better communicator as a line manager, for example? It's really important to know how people see you, because that impacts the work that you get to do. So the clearer you are, the more consistent you are, and the more consistent your team are, the more aligned you are. And it's just much clearer all around inside your organization.
Now, there are communicators out there who I think enjoy being the comms police, who also want to be a trusted advisor. So Can you be both?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you can. If you're a team of 1, for example, inside your organization, you are all things to all people. And the key bit for me there is understanding. So when I work with teams and get them to analyze their personal brand, whether they're a team of 1 or a team of 40, we're looking at what sorts of inquiries are you getting? So what are people asking for your help with? And that gives you a really clear understanding of, how are we known? Are people coming to us because we're the comms police, or are they coming to us because we're trusted advisors? And actually, is there a disconnect? Because we don't want to be seen in that particular way. We want to be seen as trusted advisors, and we're sick of correcting your grammar. We trust you to go ahead and communicate on your own, for example. So when you're really clear around why people are coming to you and queries that they have, you can just change it. You can change the dial. You can give them advice and guidance on, top 5 things to remember when you're writing a story. For example, you're being a trusted advisor and you're not correcting their grammar. You're going back to them and saying, here's some advice and guidance because we're the comms experts to help you do your job, to help you communicate better. It's not taken away from what we do, but it's enhancing internal comms, which is the whole point, the whole purpose of what we're here to do inside our organizations.
I'm glad you mentioned sort of the team of one, because I do think that happens a lot. And especially at PRSA Connect, there's a lot of people that are that team of one. How do they find that balance? Because sometimes you do need to be the comms police. You need to be the one kind of looking out and protecting maybe the brand or the message, to also being that trusted advisor. Is there I know they can't really map out their day and time slot. I'm the comms police now, and then later I'm a trusted advisor.
You got 2 hats. So
right. But is it something where they should try to be more the trusted advisor than the comms police? And how do you coach them to let go, to more think forward versus thinking back to what they need to be policing?
So my answer always around what's right, the right thing to do, is it depends on the culture. So it depends on the culture of the organization. So legacy of internal comms permeates. So you might be a team of one and the person before you might have been a trusted advisor, and you come in brand new into role and you realize there's a lot to fix because your employer brand, for example, which is your reputation and promise as an employer, is a bit broken. And actually you need to go right back to basics on tone of voice, style guide, branding, what have you. So when you're thinking about how should I be, it depends on where your organization is at in terms of its maturity for internal comms. Because if you go in all guns blazing being a trusted advisor, and actually what they need is the bread and butter, the tone of voice, branding guide, etc., comms police territory, then there's going to be a disconnect. So your internal comms is going to feel stilted and you're not going to be able to get your job done, frankly. So my advice always is to read the room. Be aware of the culture of your organization and what's right. And sometimes you have to earn your stripes and do a bit of comms policing before you can move into trusted advisor territory.
You bring a great point around sometimes you inherit a situation, especially in those teams of one, or a manager or a leader might have a certain style. And I've seen that a lot of communicators especially like to model things off of others. Like they see another company does something well, then they try to emulate that or model that for themselves. Who are some communicators out there that you think, if let's say I am someone who was more on the comms police side and wants to become more of a trusted advisor, who are some communicators out there that you think they should look at or try to emulate from to begin building that part of their profile, their brand?
So I think within the UK, we have the National Health Service, the NHS, and the communicators who work in the NHS are first class. They're absolutely fantastic. And one person who stands out for me is a doctor called Kate Granger. And she, back in 2013, started a campaign called Hello, My Name Is. And it's hashtag now online, Hello, My Name Is. And Kate really focused on truly person-centered communication. And that was, when you're a patient and you go into a hospital, particularly for children, if you're having, procedures done, having a healthcare professional say to you, hello, my name is incredibly, the power of that really simple thing to do, but the impact of that is far reaching. And Kate actually, unfortunately, died of terminal cancer back in 2016. But the campaign now, 3 years on, is still stronger than ever. People with the NHS have badges with hello, my name is, and then it has their name on it. So her legacy lives on. And she was a consultant geriatrician, so she wasn't a communicator, but her method of communicating has just permeated the NHS and wider. So for me, Dr. Kate Granger is an amazing example of the effectiveness of person-centered, truly authentic communication as well. Just finding the right level to communicate with patients.
And thinking about that from a communicator standpoint, I love the idea of creating a legacy of sorts. Mm-hmm. That's something you've done lasts on and lives in others.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this now even for PRSA Connect. And as communicators go back to their companies, if they began introducing themselves in that way to their company, because I think that's a very vulnerable thing to do. It's a very humbling thing to do. There was can't remember who it was that shared it years ago, but they said, you want to be that person in the room that you don't have to introduce yourself to people. I always thought that's a very arrogant way to think about yourself, that you go into a room and you think everybody knows you. And I think sometimes with internal communicators, they might have that impression as well, because we typically, in a lot of cases, they own the channels, they work with leaders, they work with all employees, they typically are known. But I like that idea of even communicators taking that stance of thinking about the hello, my name is campaign for themselves to build their brand inside the company.
I think the shift that we've had for internal communicators, I've been writing about it on my blog for years, around the shift from content creators to content curators. So it's no more is it about our name and our byline, that we are doing, facilitating discussions and conversations, and everybody now can be a communicator inside our organizations. And what that means is our role has shifted, and therefore who we are and what we're known for has also changed. So it is about, as I mentioned earlier, giving people guidance of how to write a story, for example. It's making sure that people know who you are and know what you offer and how you can help them be better communicators. So actually the intention is, how can you help your leaders go to your front line and they're known straight away, for example. I had that when I was in the railway. I was the head of communications, internal and external, for London Overground, which is the orange line on the tube map in London. And my executive team, I kept sending them out to stations to make sure they were pressing the flesh and walking in the shoes of employees, and every week I would get them back together and say, how's it going, what did you pick up from the front line, what are the concerns? And they kept saying to me, we're going out, we're doing this. And I said, you're not doing me a favor. When you're going out and talking with people, do people know who you are? And they said, yes, of course they do. And I wanted to test it. So I had 2 interns working for me, and I gave them 2 sheets of A4 paper, one with all the exec committee's faces on and one with their names. And Sarah and Aurora went out to all of our network across all of our stations and literally said to my frontline employees, so these are train drivers, these are ticket office employees, do you know who these people are? And also, can you match their names up? And when the results came back, actually they didn't know. They recognised a few, but they weren't quite sure, which made me think we need to do a better job. And when I played it back and looked at the analysis, it was because they hadn't gone up to people and said, hello, I'm Steve, the MD. The feedback was, oh, that's that bloke who comes round on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't the opportunity. It wasn't, hello, my name is Steve and I am the MD of London Overground and I'm here to listen to you. It was, that's that friendly face. So I think often having that really clear understanding of who you are, what you're known for, and applying that to our leaders is really critical, because we were missing a massive trick. They were missing a massive trick by something as simple as not making employees realise that actually they're talking to the exec team. There's no more senior people in the organisation. They're there, and it's about doing it with authenticity, and it's doing it with integrity. So it's not just I'm showing up and I'm putting a high-vis vest on. It's doing it and being really truthful in terms of I genuinely am interested. And they were quite shocked when I played that back to them and said, okay, so it turns out, you're right, you are going out, but you're not communicating in the right way. So then I coached them and helped them think about how they came across and the interactions they have with our frontline, which is about new habits and new ways of thinking about the impact that they were having with our frontline employees.
And going back to an earlier point, I was on a recent episode of IC Unplugged with Lee Smith, and we were talking about some of the state of the sector findings. And I shared with them that I think that communicators, we need to be the ones to stop pushing the buttons and teaching other people to push the buttons. So we don't need to be the ones writing and sending. Let's teach other people how to write and send so that we can take that higher level approach to communication, really make sure what we're doing is having an impact, and we're not just doing the basics or the bare bones things. Like you said, thinking big picture. I love that idea of doing the draw the lines between the photos and the names, because it's an exercise everybody knows how to do, but that would be very telling to an executive that yes, you were out there, but people didn't really know who you were.
No, and I think there's a lot of assumed knowledge, and I think particularly for internal communicators, we get so locked into the bubble. So before I went to the overground, I was in the underground, and I remember going to the corporate induction, and I knew the name of the CEO because that was my job to know, and I'd been in the company about a week, I think, and I went along and it said, you can have breakfast with Terry. But at no point did it say, this is Terry, this is Terry Morgan, he's our CEO. It was just an assumed knowledge that, and no one in the room asked. No one in the room said, who is this Terry? Why would we go and have breakfast with him? There was such, it had been written obviously, a bit by HR, a bit by internal comms. And I remember leaving, and I remember clarifying in the room, I couldn't sit there quietly. And I remember saying, by the way, Terry's the CEO. And everyone was like, oh, right. And then I remember leaving and saying to my director of comms, you know what, that induction is just, it makes sense if you've been here. It doesn't make sense if you're brand new in. And she said, oh, there's a task for you to do. So I ended up revitalising. But I think you often can do that in internal comms. You can often just assume that everybody knows who our exec are. Everyone knows who the CIO or CFO are. And they, you think there's an assumption that they know who she or he is, and therefore they know, you know, the style and how they communicate, and you don't. You really don't. You have to make sure that always we're looking for that clarity and looking for that certainty and looking for that consistency around how we communicate inside our organisation. It's really important.
Yeah, there certainly can be a bit of a curse of access and a curse of knowledge when it comes to internal communicators, because we do see the messages, we do see the channels, we do see the leaders, and we sort of falsely assume that everybody else has that same reach. One of the things I did want to talk to you about, so you don't just keynote at events, you are the founder of All Things IC, and I think something that's seems in the last year or so, I could be a little bit off on the dates, you started creating these master classes over in the UK, which I think are fascinating to see because it's a variety of different topics. So I'm curious to you, kind of a two-part question here. What do the communicators who attend these master classes get out of it? But also, what do you get out of it by having these very intimate sessions with communicators?
So I introduced masterclasses about in September 2016. So roughly.
So I was off on my dates a little bit.
Way off track. That's all right. About 2.5 years ago, and just today, the number 499 signed up. So hopefully this week, the 500th professional communicator will have signed up to train with me, which is fabulous. So in terms of what people get out of them, the reason I created masterclasses, which are intimate sessions in London, they're in person, so face to face, and what people get is a safe space to come and ask for help. So there are up to 10 people when I do internal communication, which is if you have up to 5 years experience, or you're a director with oodles of external and public affairs experience, but zero internal comms knowledge, and you need a deep dive one day, teach what I need to know in what I can get out one day. Strategic internal comms, which is for more senior practitioners. Change comms, which we all need help with. And then I'm doing some I introduced last year, which are for consultants. So whether you're working in-house and thinking of becoming a consultant, or you're already a consultant and need to build momentum in your business. So what people get is we shut that door and we have an honest conversation where people bring it. They just bring their problems and then we collectively solve them. So as a group, you know, I'm giving them lots of comms theory coupled with reality. So it's all very well and good having comms models, for example, but how do you translate that into reality? So a really key focus for me is ensuring everybody, I'm checking for understanding constantly all day. And so what people get is they leave with action plans. I have postcards that I encourage people to write on there, a book they're going to read, a conversation they're going to have, an action they're going to take. And some people end up, I think 26 postcards is the record that I've had, where one lady had 26 postcards. And the reason being, I want people to leave there with a really clear sense of, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to improve. This is something I really want to. So when their boss says, was that masterclass worth going to with Rachel yesterday? I can say, they can say, yes, it was. These are all the things I'm going to do. And what I get out of it is it's just one of my personal values is nurturing. And it is the most nurturing, fulfilling work I've ever had the pleasure of doing, because I can see the tangible difference and benefits that come from where people get together and be honest. And I also do lots of bespoke masterclasses with teams and one-to-ones. So a comms director and I will lock away for a day, and there's some tears often. It's not often quite emotional because it's a very stressful job if you are a team of one or if you are the most senior communicator in your organization and you can't really be seen to ask for help. So what I get out of it is providing that safe space, that confidential space to brainstorm together, to help solve their problems, and then set them up to go back in and be everything they need to be inside their organization with renewed confidence and skills and abilities and knowledge of internal comms, which is just the most fulfilling work. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm always emotionally, mentally drained after every masterclass. I do about 8,000 steps on the spot. And I never wear flat shoes. I'm 5 foot tall, as you well know. I never help myself, but there's a bit of a workout for me when I do masterclasses. It's a very, very physical day, but I just love them. And the feedback from communicators is having that space to sit around a table and go, do you know what? I'm doing change comms and I've never done it before. We're restructuring our organization. Where do I start? And you not only get advice from me and from comms theory, but from your peers, from the people around the table saying, oh, I've done that, or I did that, or don't do this, watch out for this. And I have an alumni group on LinkedIn where we continue the conversations, where there's a locked group where there's about 80 or 90 people in there, where people ask for help and no one else can see what we're discussing. Because you're in such a visible role, the gap that I'm filling is creating a safe space, be that online in the group or in person in the room.
I see that. I see that from internal communicators that and I don't think this is exclusive to internal communicators, but they take their work very personally, and how their work and their product and their reputation does impact their brand. So I can see that being, it's probably a tiny bit of misery loves company. They like to know that other people are struggling. But
so sometimes we joke it's like group therapy. Sometimes it is group therapy. And yeah, it is. And I think that's because you can't admit that you don't know what you're doing, or you just want to check your thinking. It's the most human thing in the world, just to check your thinking with peers, or particularly if you're a team of one, or if you are the most senior person in your organization, where you just have to advise your CEO, this is what I think we should do. And it's the most human thing in the world to say, I just want to check my thinking.
And it probably helps with a little bit of that imposter syndrome that some people.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Where they're doubting what they are doing. And I see that with a lot of communicators, where the things they're doing, they don't think are that great because they've been doing them. And when I see them, I'm like, no, this is amazing. Other people would love to hear about this. They're not everybody is doing what you're doing, and they're always shocked by that.
That's so true. So I've been writing my blog. In fact, it's 10 years this week. 23rd of March is 10 years since I created my blog. And I constantly spot snippets of things on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I message the author and say, that's so interesting. You know, an internal communicator will show a bit of a poster, for example. And then I'll DM them and say, can you come and share your story on my blog? Because I think what you're doing is great and other people can learn from it. And then they go, really? Do you think it's all right? I'm like, yes, it's people often don't realize quite how good their work is. And I often, before masterclasses, have, I'd say probably 2 people per session get in touch with me before, a few days before, having a bit of a wobble and a bit of a freak out, going, oh my goodness, I'm really nervous that everyone around the table will have everything nailed and everything sorted, and I'm going to be really out of my depth. And I always say, trust me, come along, I've got your back, you'll be fine, and I'm going to check in with you. On the first tea break, basically with coffee, but British is tea, I'm fueled by tea. I always check in and take them aside and go, so are you all right? Do you need to leave? And they're always completely fine. And there's always a big sigh of relief going, everyone's in the same boat. I'm all right. I'm with friends. I'm okay. So I think that supportive, nurturing environment is really important. And it's wherever you find that, whether that's Twitter chats or whether that's, you know, the IC crowd that I set up with my friends Jenny Field and Dana Leeson back in 2012 was to help communicators solve problems and ask the collective wisdom of the crowd when you are a team of one and you are in a visible role and can't ask for help.
And that's a great segue, because with PRSA Connect, you do get the collective wisdom of the crowd. It is a room full of all internal communicators. It's that room where you don't have to explain what you do.
Isn't that a relief?
It's a relief to them. And Rachel, I am proud and excited to have you come across, to be at Connect, to speak. I'm looking forward to one of your bear hugs at the event when I see you. I want to thank you for being a guest on ICology, sharing your thoughts. If you're in internal comms and you're not reading Rachel's site, get out from under your rock, go to allthingsic.com, follow her on Twitter at allthingsic, all kinds of knowledge and information there. So Rachel, thanks again for this chat.
Pleasure.
And also get signed up for Connect. Easy to find, Twitter, LinkedIn, look for the hashtag PRSA Connect. Also follow ICology on Twitter at LearnICology. Definitely looking to get back into this. I'm going to be, after this interview with Rachel, going to be talking to other speakers who are at Connect. So all of you get a chance. This is, in my opinion, the best internal comms event in the US. It is a must-attend event for internal communicators. It does sell out every year, so make sure you get signed up. And if you're listening to this and haven't subscribed to ICology, please do. I promise I will get more episodes out. If internal comms is your passion, ICology is your podcast. Thanks for listening in.